And welcome back to Migration, where we are continuing our discussion on interacting with dream characters in the lucid state. And today we are focusing exclusively on what it means to have sexual encounters on this plane of awareness. What makes sex in a lucid dream so very different from any other normal sex dream that we might have? Is it all just a figment of our subconscious, or do these characters possess some level of independent awareness? We are even going to explore some ancient shamanic traditions that claim that we're basically interacting with ghosts on that plane of consciousness. Now, once again, this is not the typical kind of discussion I usually focus on here, so if for any reason frank discussions about sex and sexuality make you uncomfortable, you may want to skip this particular video of mine. For many lucid dreamers, as was also the case with me, our first sexual experiences took place in lucid dream states. Now, I recall that I had a few waking dreams way back in elementary school, but I didn't really start to enter lucid dreaming until right around the time I hit puberty. So at a very young age, I was finding myself in these conscious realities where pretty much anything was possible. I was only limited by my ability to stay focused and grounded in these states, which we will come back around to. That is the particular rabbit hole we are diving down today, so get comfortable, smoke 'em if you got 'em, and get ready for today's episode of Migration. So when lucid dreaming first kicked in for me, I was regularly entering these landscapes at night where my psyche was fully laid out before me in full color and sound and touch. So in my case, this was like someone suddenly handed a very curious 12-year-old boy a high-tech virtual reality system that could call up any kind of media, any kind of material, including X-rated material, in a way that was just as real as reality could ever be. So, as one might expect, as a young boy, I spent a lot of my lucid dream time chasing after sexual fantasies. Basically, I would become lucid and I would immediately dash out of my dream bedroom, out of my dream house, and out into the dream world just to try to find naked dream girls. Again, I was 12 years old. I had no insights into this realm. I had no wisdom under my belt at this point. All I knew was that I was waking into a realm where I had more control over what was going on in my environment, and I was just acting pretty much on just a pure rush of 12-year-old hormones. And these sexual interactions looked and felt completely real in every sense, down to the most minute details. And that brings us to one of the stranger mysteries about lucid sex that I first became aware of. At age 11 or 12, I had no experience with girls or sex or sexuality at all, or even seeing a naked woman in real life for any reason. This was the early 80s, so in terms of what media I had access to, that was a very, very different world than it is today for kids growing up. There was no internet. My family had public network television, and that was it. So at the time, my understanding of female anatomy boiled down to seeing, women in their bathing suits or maybe in their underwear, on television. That was about it. My parents weren't conservative, but they were pretty careful with what I was exposed to. It wasn't until I was into my teens that I had actually seen real pornography. I didn't even really touch a girl in any kind of intimate way until I was about 15 or 16, and I didn't lose my virginity until I was around 19 years old. So at 11 or 12, my understanding of any of the specifics of sex was terribly vague and very clinical. The penis becomes erect and enters the vagina, et cetera, et cetera. And the only reason I really understood that much was because my dad took the time to sit me down and explain clearly how sex actually worked, which I am eternally grateful for. There were no sex ed classes back then that gave you any sort of information in any kind of detail, and so many parents cop out of that awkward and often uncomfortable discussion with their kids, and they hope they're just going to figure it out all on their own. Dad, you didn't do that. You had the integrity and you had the courage to flush out those details that can be tough to explain to a kid, and you made it clear that this was a topic open for discussion between us if I ever had more questions. So the point here in all of this is that in retrospect, my sexual interactions with girls in lucid dream states were perfectly detailed and accurate in every sense of the word. So yeah, starting from a very early age, it was sex down to every detail. And from what it feels like to have a long, passionate kiss with someone down to exactly what a vagina feels like. So what the hell is going on here? How is that possible? Again, I approach these realms with a very critical eye. I don't take other people's answers or insights on faith, ever. I want to know if there's a way that all of this can make logical sense, if that's even possible. So on one hand, maybe this mystery of ours could be explained like this. As human beings, we simply have innate knowledge of human anatomy and sexuality locked in our DNA. Maybe just like all the other kinds of survival instincts, that have been passed down to us from generation to generation. We could say it's simply from being born from a woman's body, maybe from a combination of breastfeeding and perhaps simply having a close contact with our mothers when we were babies. So maybe we just carry, knowledge of human anatomy and reproduction, and we can tap into that information in certain states of awareness. So I am fine with accepting those more scientifically grounded answers. That absolutely does not take away from lucid dream sex in any way. It doesn't make it any less amazing or profound. I would say that rather, I am deeply inspired by the possibility that we can unlock highly detailed information from our bodies under certain states of consciousness and then infuse that information seamlessly into a fully realized dream state. I mean, that's got to be the best kind of magic. But with that said, that explanation does not even begin to explain all the other phenomena I've experienced in those same states of consciousness, which makes these questions about the nature of these intimate connections even more complex. As we've already covered in my other videos on astral projection, after enough repeated encounters with lucid states where my consciousness appeared to detach from the physical body, I was able to prove to myself beyond a shadow of a doubt that what I was seeing taking place in other locations while I was asleep was indeed taking place. Sometimes it was a matter of consciously traveling to just the other side of the house I was in to see what my family and friends were up to, and sometimes it involved witnessing events that were taking place literally hundreds of miles away. I remember I actually freaked out a girlfriend of mine once when I was able to tell her what she was doing on the complete other end of the house while I was asleep. She always woke up before me. And I've played those kind of scenarios back and forth in my mind over the years, trying to see if there's another logical explanation for them, but I was coming back with information repeatedly that I could not logically have known. The point is that being able to repeatedly observe what's going on in other locations while your physical body is asleep cannot be explained away with the same kind of explanation that that information is just kind of locked away in our DNA. That doesn't follow. That's why I continue to say that we need a new answer than what traditional neurology and physics has offered so far as to how consciousness operates. Now, let me be clear that there does appear to be a difference between what we generally call a lucid dream and what we generally call an out-of-body experience. And when it comes to sexual contact with characters you meet in these states of awareness, this becomes an ever more relevant point. So when I say that I'm out of the body, so far I have not been able to, on any level, interact with those people that I am seeing in those states of awareness. And furthermore, I can't imagine what that experience would be like for them if I could interact with them. I mean, what would that experience be like from their point of view? Would I just appear as perhaps like a ghost or an apparition to them? Or maybe I would just appear like myself, as I always do. So in my case, so far, in an out-of-body experience, I'm kind of like Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, where he's just sort of viewing what's going on with these scenarios, but he can't interact with anything that's taking place around him in his environment. But that is not the case in what we generally call a lucid dream state, where not only can you communicate and converse with these characters, you can really interact with them. And some lucid dreamers out there will confidently assert that the only conclusion we can draw here is this: lucid dreams represent a totally distinct, separate category of phenomenon, and they are just taking place in our imagination until, that is, we enter an astral projection state where the center of our consciousness or the soul actually leaves the body and travels into the real world beyond the imagination. And, of course, there's also the silver cord that ties your soul to the body. Now then again, if you've been paying attention to my approach here at all, you should know that I never find our neat and tidy boxes that aim to divide these paranormal phenomena up really describe the full extent of our reality. And that brings us to a completely different perspective on what and who we encounter in lucid dream states versus an astral projection state. So we're going to take a quick detour here into another context for these experiences so that we can see this lucid sex question in a whole new light. There are several writers and philosophers like Carlos Castaneda and Don Miguel Ruiz who claim that their insights hail from the Toltec shamans of ancient Mexico, and they describe a very different perspective here, some of which coincides also with the Aborigines' notion of dreaming as well. Also, some of the ancient Buddhist traditions on lucid dreaming. And please understand, I'm paraphrasing from several different authors and thinkers here, and I'm translating fairly complex ideas into a language that we're generally familiar with on this show and in our current culture. So in many of the shamanic traditions focused on dream work, their understanding looks more like this: everything we experience is a dream, and the only difference between our daily life, our normal dreams, and our lucid dreams is the amount of awareness we possess in the moment, how much conscious energy we have access to. They would say that the only reason that this world of ours appears solid and stable is simply because that ever since we entered this realm, we've been trained by others around us how to hold our attention to certain elements in this world and how to keep that world together and stable through a kind of ongoing storytelling in our mind. And many of these shaman would say that our consciousness can always manifest a body of some kind or another that is a physical representation of our abstract identity, if you will. Right now, for example, as you sit there watching this video, in the real world, as we call it, they would say that your consciousness is manifesting the body that you are currently experiencing from microsecond to microsecond. But when we set this physical body aside in a sleep or a meditative state, our awareness can then manifest another body of some kind. That means that from this particular shamanic view, once the ordinary physical body, say, falls into a deep sleep and we enter a dream state, our consciousness can temporarily manifest another body, which we then use to explore those realities. And that's the one you experience in your dream states. To them, a fully enlightened person is simply someone who's realized that this world is also a dream and they can manipulate it or change things just like you could in a lucid dream state. So for now, I'm going to leave all of those possible implications up to your imagination with what this worldview implies. But I will say this to make this point abundantly clear. When I moved out of my body, for example, to visit my girlfriend on the other side of the house, if I was able to maintain my focus and open myself to enough conscious energy, they say I could have appeared to her in the flesh, and she wouldn't have known the difference at all. In the Carlos Castaneda series, for example, Carlos claims that much of his tutelage was given to him by a shaman who appeared as any other flesh and blood man, but whose ordinary physical body was asleep somewhere else, in some cases even miles away. So the question of who or what I'm having sex with in a lucid dream state may ultimately be the exact same question of who is it that I'm having sex with in my daily life. Their physical bodies are all born and sustained on consciousness. So remember in part 1, I mentioned how when you follow this path, you'll start noticing that often your insights will come full circle and you'll find yourself right back where you started. So given this philosophy, again, we find ourselves right back at square one, where we realize that our quest for understanding brings us right back to where we are now, looking at our ordinary daily world we are familiar with, but from a brand new perspective. So if those shamanic philosophies are indeed correct, then our lucid dream states may not exactly be the consequence-free realms that we often imagine that they are. In other words, maybe we should regard other dream characters in these states with the same kind of respect that we would extend to anyone else in our daily life. And as I've said, there are a lot of seasoned lucid dreamers out there who do carry that philosophy, but whatever your approach is, whatever your belief system is in terms of what lucid dream characters are or what they represent, it is going to impact how you approach lucid dreaming, especially sexual activity in those states. Now, as I said at the opening here, I had no philosophy at age 12. I was little more than a raging bundle of hormones. I really did not give any kind of thought to being present in the moment or asking what the nature of these realities were. I was after one thing, and I have people who reach out to me all the time who are desperate to learn how to lucid dream for the sole purpose of having sex with their greatest fantasy. But as I said, whenever I've chased after a sexual experience in that state, I've been met with varying degrees of success, and here's why that is. It turns out that when all of your attention is consumed with desire, or you're overwhelmed with stimulation, you can't see straight. And in a lucid dream, your attention has a direct impact with the stability of your environment. So if your attention is erratic for any reason, your world can literally break down around you. Rachel Olsen and I dug into that topic a lot in our interview on exactly what can happen when you lose focus on that state of awareness. So in my case, for example, at 12 years old, I'd be in a lucid dream about to take off a woman's shirt, and the more excited I got with the ideas of, oh, I'm going to touch some boobs, the more everything around me would start to twist and shapeshift. Her breasts would turn into headlights, or I'd take off her shirt and there'd be like another shirt under that one, and then another one, and then another, just stuck in a constant loop of frustration. When I was young, I had no idea what was going on, but now it's clear. That's what I was feeding into my world, so that's what I was getting back from it. So the reality is that all of my sexual encounters on that realm were little more than brief moments of clarity interspersed with a lot of chaos. So yeah, you can find yourself in a real struggle between intense pleasure and utter frustration. You know just how sex can be in real life. And again, there's that full circle. Our experiences in the astral realm can bring us right back to our daily reality that we're dealing with right now. Lucid dreaming really just shows you again and again how our own state of consciousness is affecting our reality moment by moment. That's true for dreams where you're flying or shape-shifting into spirit animals or having sex. And what I ultimately found was this. The only way to really have any kind of satisfying sexual encounter in a lucid dream state was to find a way to keep your cool throughout the entire experience. And I'll tell you, that is not always easy. You have to simultaneously be present to the moment, but also detached from the desire. I want this to happen, and I want this to happen, etc., etc. Remember how I explained in part 1 that when you are reaching into the future, you're also cutting off your own power where it counts the most, in the present moment. It's why the Buddhists focus so much on taking desire out of the picture. So if you can stay in the moment, keep focusing on what is unfolding for you, then yeah, your greatest sexual fantasies can indeed be played out at length with all your senses tuned up to a 10, and it can indeed be every bit as real as the real thing. Yes, complete with an orgasm. But the price that you have to pay for that experience is giving up any kind of obsessive cravings that are going to pull you off balance. In conclusion, if someone thinks that they're going to learn how to lucid dream for the sole purpose of having their greatest sexual fantasies played out in full color and sound and feel, you are probably going to be met with a lot of frustration and disappointment. Your overwhelming desires are going to pull your world apart again, just like they do in real life. Now, of course, we will come back to this topic over and over because there's just no way to cover everything that can be said on this subject in a 20 or 30 minute video or even a 400-page book. And of course, as always, please like and subscribe if you enjoy seeing this kind of content as opposed to a lot of the other noise that is out there on the YouTube verse. So until next time, thanks so much. And if you have any questions, you are always welcome to add them in the comments below, and I do everything I can to get around to everyone. So Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, take care.